Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining our session titled Open Microbiology, Student Voices and Global Partnerships in OER. My name is Ying Liu. I am a biology instructor from City College of San Francisco. And I also just recently did a one-year sabbatical in the University of Dundee in Scotland. So co-presenting with me are actually a fabulous group of students from both CCSF and University of Dundee, and we're just really pleased that you are here with us. Next slide. So here's our agenda. So we're going to start with welcoming everybody to our session. We're going to introduce ourselves to you guys, and then we're going to start talking about our project overview, including our timeline, and then what's the motivation behind the project. We're going to do a brief introduction of the LibreText platforms that we're using for our project. And then the main focus of our talk today is going to be the micro EDI research study that we're doing. We basically expanded three of case studies, kind of integrating EDI principles, which means equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think most people are familiar with it. So we're going to talk a little bit about our survey findings, and our students are going to talk about the impact of international collaboration and student co-creation. We're going to wrap up the session with some of the lessons we learned and also recommended best practices. And then in the end, we'd love to take some of your questions and then have a discussion with everybody who's in the room. Next slide. So let's start by doing a round of introduction. My name is Liu. I've already introduced myself. I'm at City College of San Francisco, but I was also a visiting scholar at the University of Dundee in Scotland. Unfortunately, our student co-presenter Isabel is having a little bit technical difficulty joining Zoom, so hopefully she'll be here very soon. So Isabel is a year 2 student going on in year 3, and Esther.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esther. I'm also a student studying at Dundee. I'm studying biomedical sciences. I'm a second year going into my third year.
Grace.
Hi everyone, my name is Grace. I'm going into my third year at the University of Dundee as well, studying biological sciences.
And hi, everybody. I'm Serena, and I'm a former student of Ying's at City College of San Francisco, and I'll be studying disease ecology at SF State this coming fall.
Thank you. Next slide. So our project is titled OpenStax Microbiology Ancillaries, or OSMA, as a brief. So why OSMA? As you guys probably have heard a lot during this conference, a lot of time, especially STEM instructors, the reason they hesitate to adopt OER resources is not just about the quality of OER textbook. So the OpenStax microbiology textbook is actually really good in terms of quality. But before my college switched to OpenStax, we were actually using publisher material. So Serena can actually tell you that we were using McGraw-Hill a textbook, clinical microbiology textbook. But it comes with question bank. It comes with a lot of different practice questions and stuff. And students do have to spend $85 per semester to buy access. So what we realize is it's not just textbook that's missing. It's actually the ancillaries that are really missing. So the main motivation behind our project was to create these ancillaries, so question banks, case studies, to match with publisher commercial textbook quality. In the process, in addition to the ancillary, we end up remixing the OpenStax microbiology textbook, adding a lot of HIV questions along the way, just students have a way to self-test themselves as they read the chapter. Next slide, please. So here's our project timeline. And we actually started the project back during the pandemic in 2020. The first phase of the project was actually funded by ASCCC OER initiative. So that phase actually included all microbiology instructors from California and also Hawaii. And we end up creating a Canvas shell that contains basically, question banks and case studies for all 26 chapters of the OpenStax microbiology textbook. Starting in 2023, we decided to move a lot of the resources from Canvas to LibreText to increase access, so to make it easier for instructors using different learning management system. So back in 2023, thank you for Dalmar Larson, who's actually here. We harvested all the Canvas questions and then moved them into LibreText Adapt homework system. Our students also added feedback to most of the questions, basically telling students why they're getting the correct answers right and then why they're getting the wrong answers wrong. So we figured that's a better pedagogical move. And then starting in 2024, we actually started moving the case studies from Canvas New Quiz, which is actually not a very good platform for hosting these case studies, into LibreText Studio, which uses H5P technology. So today we're gonna show you some of the case studies that we created, and thanks again for Dalmar, who has been funding our student co-creators throughout the later phases in the last couple of years. Next slide, please.
Sorry, so I'm just gonna briefly touch upon the tools that we use to organize and build our ancillary teaching aids. These tools allowed us to stay on track with our project timeline and directly influences the quality and usability of our final products, which these are all done facilitated through LibreText platforms. So the first tool I want to talk about is LibreText Conductor, which was our central hub for project management and within this multi-institutional collaboration. Each draft and deadline and link was stored in the conductor to use as reference and to allow us to track progress and keep things on schedule. This kind of structured project management is really key when working with collaborators across time zones and to ensure that we're hitting our project goals. And then it really permitted us to keep all case studies and related quiz material consistent using templates and standards that we kept organized within the system. And then moving forward, our question banks were built out using LibreText Adapt, which we organized them by topic and learning objectives so that teachers, when they go through and use some of these resources, they can really align them directly with their own course structure, they're completely adaptable. And they can be embedded into different learning experience systems, allowing you to create practice questions and graded assignments and review activities based on this library that we built out in Adapt. The majority of our questions include detailed feedback, so students can really understand the reasoning behind the questions, the answers to each question, and not just identify what's correct and what's incorrect without necessarily understanding the concept behind it. And the system itself supports a variety of question types like multiple choice, multiple response, fill in the blank, ordering, matching. So it's a really dynamic curriculum that you can build out using these question banks. And altogether, we developed over 1,000 practice quiz questions, the majority of which include detailed feedback across the 26 microbiology topics that are kind of elaborated upon in the OpenStax textbook. Similar questions were also kind of built out using the next tool we used, which was the Libre Studio's H5P format, which Ying used in her Introduction to Microbiology OER textbook that she'll go into a little bit more in depth in later slides. But that H5P tool was really key to our interactive case studies that we worked on, which was like a real core of our project. So our H5P case studies are really they're designed with pre-nursing students in mind, which primarily CCSF microbiology students are on that pre-nursing track. And so the case studies themselves are grounded in like realistic clinical scenarios and include sections like patient intake, lab results, and diagnostics, so that as students are working through that, they're really getting familiar with what they may encounter in like real world settings. The case studies themselves are modular. So ideally, instructors would assign the whole case study for independent study, but like they can also pull from specific sections or specific questions to really like fit their own curriculum in their own way. And we believe that the interactive elements and embedded feedback really help students connect with microbiology concepts in their real world practice, which they'll encounter in their careers. Using the OpenStax textbook, we expanded 26 case studies to make them more interactive and help students refer back to textbook material. We also updated 3 of those case studies to have a greater emphasis on equity, diversity, and inclusion in public health spaces, which that'll be expanded upon in later slides. And each of the total 29 case studies include around 10 to up to 30 embedded questions and interactive components. Ultimately, these resources allow for flexibility for instructors, allowing you to adopt a single case study, a single question, or to create your own integrated curriculum. And because they're OER, you can adapt and remix them for your student needs and teaching style. Yeah, so these are just kind of the breakdown of the H5P case studies and the different question types.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through our microEDI research study that we carried out recently. So microEDI stands for Microbiology Integrated with Case Studies Reflecting on Equity, Diversity and Inclusion. So this was a collaboration between CCSF and the University of Dundee. So students from both institutions filling out the survey, and we were looking at their perspectives and opinions on EDI in educational resources. We presented 3 case studies on TB, HIV, and rabies in a pre-research survey, and then used the student feedback to create 3 more, which were presented in the post-research survey. We also created a student co-creation survey to be filled out by the members of the team. So on the next slide, I'll just take you through our equity-focused approach. So we look at this from 2 angles, and that's incorporating diverse perspectives in our materials and ensuring accessibility for our learners. So our global collaboration promotes diverse perspectives in our case studies, and we work to include how the challenges faced in our case studies are experienced in different parts of the world. We also work to bridge STEM gaps by ensuring our learners see themselves in our materials and feel supported in their learning that way. We encourage critical thinking by illustrating the intersection between social issues and microbiology. And we encourage our learners to look back at the case studies and analyse which challenge were faced and why. We were happy to see from the survey that our work to increase critical thinking was well taken. For example, a student from CCSF said that the EDI focus lesson helped them better understand how cultural background and social factors affect patient care, and this directly deepened their empathy and critical thinking as a future healthcare provider. And this is exactly what we're aiming for. So we also ensure accessibility for learners by having free resources. So we remove financial barriers and ensure equal access to education. We have adaptable materials to make them more accessible to different ranges of learning abilities and styles. Some examples of how we make them accessible are that we have inclusive language. We cater for different learning styles with a variety of question types, incorporating Bloom's taxonomy when we can. For student co-creation, we are working to make the resources ourselves so we can bounce ideas off each other. We know what works for us. We can try and figure out how to make it more accessible to other people as well. On the next slide, with our pre-research survey, we found a strong baseline support for EDI. with 95% saying that they were moderately to extremely familiar with EDI, and 100% agreeing that EDI integration in educational resources was moderately to extremely important. Those who took the survey identified EDI as representation and visibility, putting the science into real-world context and promoting fair access and equal opportunity for all. We have a quote at the bottom from Dundee about what EDI means to them. And on the next slide, we have more quotes. So in the survey, we asked, what does EDI mean to you in the context of education? These quotes highlight how important the inclusion of EDI is from the perspective of students. They said that it affects how you see and interact with the world. For healthcare workers, it equips them to serve a diverse population. And someone said that EDI integration is an essential part of their education. So on the next slide, using the survey feedback, we created 3 new case studies in which we worked to include inclusive images, relevant health disparities, and make sure that they were culturally relevant. So we have 3 case studies. The TB case study is set in Nigeria, rabies case study is set in India, and our HIV case study is set in San Francisco. And they were designed to highlight the social determinants, which can include, where they're set in. So on the next slide, in our second survey, we found that the students found the new case studies more engaging. They had improved understanding and increased empathy, and they agreed that representation matters for inclusion. And we have another quote from CCSF, which said that highlighting the intersection between healthcare and social issues made the learning feel more meaningful. So on the next slide, I just want to highlight the impact of student feedback on our case studies. So I worked on the new HIV case study, and the original feedback that we got on the first one was that it did not show the cultural impact and wider context of the HIV/AIDS crisis. So we wanted to show in our second one what HIV infection looks like in the modern day in terms of testing and treatment, etc., while also highlighting the history of the HIV/AIDS epidemic and the stigma and misconceptions that still exist today. So here are 2 quotes from our post-research survey, which talk about it being grounded in reality, it providing context and addressing the stigma. So the student feedback really helped. So I'll pass on to Esther now to talk about EDI case study that she worked on.
Hi, so I worked on the TB case study, which was set in Nigeria. And some of the pre-research feedback and something that I also noticed is that the name on the first study was not of Nigerian descent. And that was really apparent to me when working on it, because as you've seen in some of the feedback that we've got from parts of our other surveys, lots of people are familiar with EDI and it helps them to feel more included. And so it was really important to make sure that the name was inclusive and that it supported the background of the study. And from this, it exposed people to a wide range of cultures. As you can see on the slide, that's what the quote says. It expanded understanding and it promoted inclusion. And you have a picture of the final case study on the slide with the final name as Amina Lawal, which is a common name in Nigeria. So I'm now going to be talking about student co-creation and why it's so important for our project. So, what is student co-creation? It's where students, us, and this team actively contribute to content development, learning resources, and knowledge sharing. As a team, our co-creation together helped us to move beyond passive learning and take ownership of our own knowledge. And the benefits of that is that it enhanced engagement with our learning resources, it aided our critical thinking, and it helped us effectively collaborate together, which overall made our learning more interactive and more meaningful. Next slide, please. And so over the course of us co-creating together, the team took a survey on how we felt about co-creating, what it did for our confidence and things like that. And the main feedback that we got back is that it empowered students. It boosted our confidence and self-efficacy. It helped us hone and find out new academic and teamwork skills. It made space for meaningful collaboration. And the most important thing is that it broadened our educational perspectives. And as you can see from the quote from one of our co-creators at the bottom, it says that it made a massive impact on their self-confidence and that their ideas were valued and used. Next slide, please. So each of us played a role in building the content, whether it was researching, writing, or editing. When we used LibreText, it helped us to maintain a shared space where we could refine and enhance this project together. And one of the key highlights of this, the three key highlights that are there, is that our teamwork, it deepened our learning and engagement, but also blended our multiple personal perspectives, but also our learning styles as students. When it came to the content development, knowing each other's learning styles, knowing each other's personal background, it helped us make the content from a unified student perspective. And lastly, when we collaborated together, we constantly revised the content and gave each other peer feedback, which again improved our work, but also deepened our learning. Next slide, please. So the key takeaways from all of this and from the micro EDI case studies is that EDI integration is important. It improves relevance, memory retention, but also it amplifies the student voice and the control that they can have over their learning. Their cultural relevance fosters deeper understanding. Us working together as a team and co-creating, it built our confidence and our skills. And a highlight again is that the cross-cultural collaboration over the team enriched the learning.
Sorry. So as we are creating these case studies, as part of my sabbatical project, we also decided to remix a microbiology textbook. So it's largely based on the OpenStax microbiology textbook. But what we end up doing is we actually end up chunking some of the content and then make sure that, as students are reading along the way, we embedded a lot of the H5P questions so that they can actually self-test their knowledge. So showing on the screen, you have an example of a table that shows the 5 classes of antibody, and then right underneath it, there is a HIP ranking kind of activity asking students to rank the abundance of the 5 classes of antibody. The next slide shows you that another part of intentional design of the textbook is that we want to make sure that every page starts with the learning objectives and it ends with the key concepts and summaries. So we kind of have the content book ended with the learning objective and then the key concepts so that students, as they're reading along the way, they have the big pictures in mind to really think about what they need to learn from that particular page. Next slide. I think this one is Isabel's.
Hello. So I'm talking about why international collaboration matters. But first off, is this next slide, please? Brill, thank you. So international collaboration has proved a significant advantage to our project. So as you can see, we're mostly based in Dundee when Ying was doing her sabbatical over with us. But at the moment, Ying and Serena are based in San Francisco, and for a period of time, we had Grace based in Toronto in Canada. But we were all kind of united by this common interest in microbiology. If we just go on to the next slide. So the main benefit and something that our project hugely relied on was our strong digital communication. So Zoom was huge for our meetings. So we collaborate across time zones. So we'd have weekly meetings in which we'd share our progress and coordinate tasks with each other so we could keep up to date of where we were and what we were doing for the next week. We also used channels like Slack and Outlook to make sure we're all on the same page, to organize and divide our tasks equally between ourselves, and help us stay on the same page despite being halfway across the world from each other. Obviously, we like to meet in person where possible, but obviously being an international group, we were able to use all of these really efficiently to help our project flow. If you just move on to the next slide. So our different locations created a really diverse perspective for our project. So when creating really engaging students for really engaging questions for our students, we would need that diverse kind of perspective to make sure that we have input from different people, because everyone has different educational needs. So we're able to kind of cover every single aspect, being from different parts of the world. We're always changing and improving our work, and these different perspectives kind of optimize the amount of improvement and progress we can make in our work. And especially being from different institutions, City College of San Francisco and the University of Dundee, we were able to have that different experience from different educational backgrounds, and come together to be able to create some great resources for students. And also, it goes without saying, the wide global network that we created from our different backgrounds. For example, the EDI survey that's already been mentioned previously, we were able to distribute the survey throughout San Francisco and Dundee as well. So we had the best of both worlds, best of different opinions. I think that's also something to be mentioned, is that there were different opinions from the different places, although they mostly had the same message. It was interesting to see kind of the ways that people's opinions would vary, and we wouldn't have that if we weren't kind of an international collaboration. Also, with this wider global network, we can reach more people with our resources, and hammer home the fact that the whole point of our project is access to education for all, for everyone, which is really important. And so more individuals benefit. So international collaboration just essentially creates the best version of our project possible. And building this network, we can navigate the time zones really easily. I think we've all kind of gotten used to it now, so it works really smoothly. And at the end of the day, accessible, engaging content for all using our resources is most important. Just go on to the next slide. In addition to international collaboration, I think our student perspectives were really important in this as well, because we are students creating resources for other students. I think it helped us really tailor to people's needs, discuss what worked for us, what doesn't work for us, and whether we can make sure we can create this accessible kind of content for everybody. We also found this was highly beneficial to our own learning. I think we touched on this earlier, but I think we need to, as we're kind of doing this work and creating resources for other students, through this, we're kind of having our own learning experiences, especially through these case studies that we're making. I think we've made one, there's another one under the way with researchers at the University of Dundee. And this has just been fantastic, I think, for helping us kind of communicate with our staff more, become more integrated into the current workings of the university, and make sure that we're kind of like becoming fully involved. That's really helped us as well. And be able to kind of push that research out there has also been hugely beneficial to everyone who's using our resource as well. So yeah, student perspectives are very important. I think go on to the next slide.
So you guys have heard having our students, co-creators are so eloquent in summarizing their experiences and why it's so important. So this is just a summary slide to show the numbers. So we basically created this textbook, Introduction to Microbiology, and it's been submitted to actually open textbook library that's sponsored by Open Education Network, and it also will be hosted in the ASCCC OERI website to make it easier for other microbiology instructors to discover it. And then, so question banks, we made more than 1,000 questions in LibreText Adapt. For case studies, we have 26 clinical focus scenarios that are based on OpenStax. And then we end up creating our own EDI integrated 3 case studies that our students just told you about. And as Isabel just mentioned, we're also working on Dundee specific case studies. And then the motivation over there is actually undergraduate students like Isabel, Esther, and Grace. They may or may not always know the cutting edge research that's happening in their university. So by collaborating with Dundee researchers, we can actually introduce them to what the research is going on, and then kind of couple the research and the teaching component in the university, which is actually one of the School of Life Sciences, one of their main goals. If you can go to just the next slide. So I know we're actually going a little bit over the time limit. I'm going to be short. So some of the lessons we have learned in this process of co-creation and collaboration. So number one, be very effective in communication and also having very realistic and also flexible timelines. Our student perspectives are really important. And then very early on, we start doing platform training. Next slide. So these are a few of our, recommended best practice. So I think Esther just mentioned that students and myself, we collaborate and we review each other's work. So that's really important. And then we also have guidelines and menus that are created by our student leads. We provide standardized templates. And once we have things on LibreText, we provide very clear metadata and tagging. And that's also very important because that's how other people can actually discover the resources that we created. Going to the next slide. So we just want to say a huge thank you to Del Mar and LibreText for your funding, supporting our students' work. And also Del Mar's team is fantastic. So anytime we have technical questions, they're just right on it. They always help us along. Also want to thank City College and of San Francisco and University of Dundee for institutional support and also for IRB approval for our research study. And I kind of want to wrap up the talk going back to the keynote actually from Wednesday. So David Wiley actually mentioned that, falling in love is the problem and not the solution. So I think I just want to kind of end the talk by saying that, we started the project because we want to improve our student learning. And then we want to provide resources to help improve student learning. Technology has changed since the beginning of our project. And, the project is ongoing. So we just want to kind of root our project and thinking about why we started the project and then, keep providing more resources to help students from both countries actually start learning. So I think our last slide is basically the whole project team with two City College of San Francisco students, Serena and Casey, and also several Dundee students. So we're gonna thank you so much for being here. And then for me personally, I really want to say a heartfelt thank you to all our student co-creators. You guys have made this project so much better than I could have imagined. And I think your collaborative effort actually makes me a better educator in the process. So we're just going to spend the next few minutes to see if people have questions and if you have any questions for our students co-creators. I'm looking at the chat. So Greg, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself to talk about Canvas new quiz.
Yeah, thank you. Very impressive, by the way, Yang and all the students. That's so wonderful. The international collaboration. Yay. I love this. I enjoyed the session a lot more than I thought I would. I thought you mentioned when you were talking about the technological part of, creating the questions, I thought you mentioned something about Canvas new quizzes. And is that right? And what difference did that make?
So I'm glad you actually mentioned that. So Canvas New Quiz turned out to be an external app. So when we created our first round of clinical scenarios, and then we basically put the Canvas shell on Canvas Commons. So all the questions, other instructors can literally just import the question bank and they can use it, put them directly into their Canvas shell. For the new quiz, unfortunately, they cannot modify them. So for them to use the case studies, they pretty much have to recreate the case studies. So our case study ended up being kind of an inspiration and not something that instructor can just directly import into their Canvas course, which is really not what we intended. We wanted to make it easier for everybody else to adopt the resources we create. Does that kind of answer your
thank you.
question?
I know that new quizzes did not incorporate into Canvas Commons. I think they fixed that in the last year or so, but that's thank you.
Thanks. And I'm also looking at, so Tara's comment about, so Tara, okay, you're not teaching microbiology yourself, but you're just saying that you would recommend our resources to our microbiology folks. So thank you for that support. And Christina just said, oh, thank you so much, Christina. And Delmar, of course, what's next? Really good question. So I think, so the textbook is, it's in its current version is done. So at the moment, we're trying to, put them in different places so that people can use them. So the Dundee molecular microbiology instructor professor actually has agreed to use it. And at City College, I think our instructors will also use them. But we'd love to have more folks using them. And then in terms of resources, so the case studies are, as long as people have the link, they can actually embed the case study into however they want to use it. We also have our H5P questions that people can actually embed individual H5P questions if they're willing to do that. One of the suggestions actually that came from Delmar yourself is, so if you think about publisher, material, each chapter has their own slide deck, right? PowerPoint. So these are some of the things that we can continue working on. And then one more thing, so we're actually working closely with the OERI and Delmar's team in LibreText, trying to track and see how many institutions, how many instructors are actually using the resources that we're creating, and looking at the analytics so that we have an idea of, if they're being adopted, because these resources are created for people to use. And also, probably more importantly, if people are not using our textbook, why not? What's missing in the resources that we're providing? That way we can actually keep improving on them. And Sarah, I just saw your comment on that your microbiology folks are waiting for the resource. So yeah, thank you. And then Christina actually has a question for the students. Sorry, I'm not very good at multitasking. So Christina, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask them.
Yes, hi. Great job. I mean, I think it is inspirational to have this type of collaboration. I mean, we have teams of faculty doing, teamwork, but I cannot imagine doing this internationally with different time zones, and students, undergraduate and graduate students. So kudos to you, Ying, for putting this together, and to the awesome students. Now, my question is, has being part of this project change your view, interest in microbiology or not? Maybe I wonder what the impact of being part of this project has had in you, the view of the discipline and your future.
I think for me, the science can sometimes feel very isolated from the real world. So you learn a lot about sort of molecules and molecular biology. It's a very, very zoomed in view of what's happening. I'm working on this project, you work on case studies. So you can see the real world applications of the science that we're learning, which has been so beneficial. And I love to see the actual implications of what we're learning. Working on the EDI case studies has been my favorite part of this project so far. Like I said, I worked on the HIV one, and I got to explore both the history of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, but also the modern day implications of that. So yeah, just seeing it from zoomed out view has been really helpful. And for me personally, I have ended up changing I'm doing biological sciences, but now with a specialty in microbiology. So.
I think for me, just the same thing as what Grace said, the science has felt more real. And I now have a greater appreciation of microbiology itself, especially when doing the case studies and realizing about like the patient information and the lab tests and how epidemiology plays a part in it. I kind of view it all now as like a big spider web of which microbiology is the center. It hasn't really changed what I want to go into, but it's definitely made me realize like what's behind it and why it's so important.
I think I'd agree with both what Grace and Esther said. But just to add on to that, I think the involvement in kind of specifically the University of Dundee case studies, I've been chatting with my lecturers, with researchers, and I think being able to connect with those people definitely makes like microbiology like a lot more tangible, if that's the right word. So it makes me feel more collected. And I think like when you're sitting in a lecture hall and you're watching a lecture and they're saying everything like about microbiology, you can learn as much as you want from that, but actually being involved and being proactive about it, and especially like creating resources for other students, you're kind of learning alongside of that. I think that's really important. So yeah, I've got a newfound appreciation for microbiology, I think.
For me personally, my interest in microbiology started with Ying's curriculum at City College. My background is more in social sciences and like kind of environmental policy. And so going back to school at City College and taking that course really like inspired my interest in the topic. And so just like over the past couple of years working on this project has allowed me to continue to engage in that, to like which has shaped my desire to go towards a more disease ecology focused like trajectory in my career. Yeah.
Thank you so much.